So welcome to the OpenJS Foundation Cross-Project Council meeting for October 1st, 2019. We'll follow our standard agenda, which was in the original issue, which is issue 336. To start out with, does anybody have any announcements that they'd like to share? If not, okay, we'll move on to the issues which are tagged for the agenda. The first one is number 335, request for legal advice. I believe actually, if I remember the number, that's probably the one that I opened.
Yep, yeah, I had put that on the agenda.
Okay.
And just in general for these ones, the reason I wanted to put this on the agenda was to just let everybody know, if you do have questions like this, then you can certainly ask. It may be, for some things, it may be easier just to send them directly to me, depending upon what the topic is, operations@openjsf.org. But
yeah, I guess it's like, I did wonder a little bit about that in terms of the, like, I think generally we'd like them documented if we can. I do understand though that the legal advice that comes back probably can't just be posted in.
well, sometimes it can, and that depends on what the topic is. Sometimes it's maybe just the reason I wanted to bring this up for discussion today is sometimes maybe it's better to post the conclusions versus the in-process discussion. So for some things, there are also, this is maybe a good example. There's some things which maybe need advice and maybe don't, but it may not be clear. And this is something which I'd been discussing earlier this week with Michael as well. In the case where somebody doesn't really know one way or another, you can definitely ask. And the answer may be, this is something that does require an attorney, or this is something that doesn't require an attorney. It's maybe better to err on the side of caution, but there may be some things like, where, for example, if we're not dealing with a legal document, where it doesn't necessarily need to go to an attorney. But
yeah,
if you're unsure, I just want to encourage everybody, please do ask. This is one of the things that we're here for, is to help you navigate these things as well.
Yeah, and I would just, my preference just personally is if we actually have issues, because then if somebody searches in the future, we can find out, oh, this was already asked, and it's like, oh, we didn't need advice, or there was, at least, you might find a thread that lets you know the question was asked before, and even if we can't publish the answer, we can go and say we've already asked this and find it, or I don't know.
Yep. That's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's just sort of discoverability, learning about things in the future. It's just, I think, a little better. Any other thing you wanted to discuss on this one before we move on?
No, it's just more point of process that, this is, we're certainly happy to take these questions when that makes sense to take the questions. And there may be cases where it's, something that doesn't necessarily need an attorney on it, but, certainly feel free to ask and feel free to surface those. Yeah,
and that's definitely an important point, because even if it doesn't, just still the help into figuring out that it doesn't is valuable in itself.
Sure. That's all I had on that one, Mike. I didn't have anything else deep to go into on that.
Okay. So let's move on to the next one, which is administering project applications. It's number 331. Let me just open that up. Unless whoever tagged it for the agenda wants to jump in. Okay, so I think this is the one that that Miles added in terms of an SLA. And there is some coverage of that in 321. I guess my comment was that we do have what would be our basic SLA, which is like, hey, 48 hours, we should respond. There is another follow-on comment from Toby that, hey, we should actually respond and probably let them know who the champion is once we know, right? I'm not sure there's anything else to discuss on that one. Is there anything else that people, thoughts, points to discuss? No, if not, I think we'll leave it on the agenda until we have Miles just to confirm whether or not he's happy removing the agenda tag or not. Okay, so we can move on to the next issue, which is clarify whether the content of application becomes public if project is approved. This is number 327. And it was opened by Toby, and let me just check. And Toby is on the call. I think we covered that you had a suggestion which was added to 321. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss or bring up on that one?
Yeah, I mean, just a brief point. I think it's actually a lot easier to provide that, room for sort of like Chatham House conversation and potentially open it afterwards. I mean, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be able to get the application that I submitted to be open as a second step. It's way easier once it's written. People are much more comfortable with it than if it's done, if it's required up front. So, that's just what I wanted to add to it.
That sounds good. And were you happy with what I added to 321 to cover that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Okay, so if you're happy, maybe we can take the tag. I mean, maybe just close this one if you think we've done everything we need to do, or take it off the agenda, whichever you think is most appropriate.
Either works for me.
Okay, we might as well close it.
I assume they would get auto-closed once 321 was submitted, but yeah. Whatever.
I think that would be a manual thing.
So okay, so I can close it now. Yeah, okay. You want me to close it now? Okay, that works.
Yeah, sure. You can always reopen if we don't land the other one.
Sounds good. Thank you.
By 321. Okay. And I guess then moving on to the next issue, which is.
I think Joe had something to say.
Sorry, Joe. I just wanted to jump in and ask, in regards to 321, what's the blocker on that one currently? Do we know?
I think at this point, there was one question from Miles about whether we needed to do some like pre-checks on the like the IP and stuff to be transferred. We did have some discussion at the board level on Friday. My take is that the answer is no to that question. So really, I guess I just need to close the loop with Miles and make sure he's okay with that. And then I believe that we've passed the number of days. It's on my sort of to-do to go back and double check that. And if the answer is yes, then I can forward it on through email to get approval of the board before it lands.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else with questions, comments before we move on? Okay, the next issue then is number 327, responsible security disclosures. Just opening that up. And I guess that looks like it was probably closed since the meeting agenda was generated. Oh no, that's the wrong number. That's the one we just talked about. Okay, right, yes, okay. So responsibility security disclosures is number 326. Let me open that one. So this one again, Toby opened this and it's asking about whether there's a standard way to accept security disclosures. And there has been some discussion back and forth. Certainly the Node.js security working group has been handling or managing disclosures for ecosystem modules. And I think it's an interesting question in terms of how that relates or how we should position that in terms of the OpenJS Foundation. There has been some discussion as to whether, like, we're already working to kind of split up that security working group into two groups within Node Core, one which is more focused on Node Core and one which is focused on the ecosystem. And the thought was that it might actually move up to the OpenJSF level at some point, and I think this could relate to that. So Toby, do you have things you want to add and clarify on that one?
Not really.
Have you taken a look at all at what the security ecosystem has been doing, working group has been doing?
I haven't, I'm afraid, no.
Okay, because I think it's worth us looking at that, saying, is that something that, how does that relate to ecosystem, to modules for the OpenJSF? I think Brian might have even mentioned that the Linux Foundation acts as a CNA for some, or am I imagining that?
No, I think I saw something. I think Miles mentioned that. No, I don't know.
Right. I said, I guess he mentioned GitHub. GitHub does that work. In the security working group, we have a relationship with HackerOne, where HackerOne actually, the reports go to them. They do some initial triage. If we think it's useful to have something across the OpenJSF projects, or at least a pattern that says, hey, this is the way that we do it. We also use HackerOne in the Node project. We do issue our own CVEs because we'd set that up before HackerOne, but they also are, like, HackerOne will help you issue those as well. So if there was kind of interest from other OpenJSF projects, we could certainly explore the common pattern, or whether something centralized makes sense or whatever.
Okay, well, I think I'll come back with feedback maybe like in a few weeks about this.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think it's all sort of syncing up, maybe getting you together with the security working group, and I think Sam sort of started the discussion of, like, and we've involved a few of the people like Marcin to see if moving it up or whatever makes sense. So sounds like making the discussion, let the discussion run for a little while, and then we can come back to it. I think we should probably take the label off the agenda then until we need to bring something back to this group. Makes sense?
Well, yes, but I can't do that. So
no, I just did it right now.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Moving on to the next issue. So commit to providing a reply to an application with a specific time frame. This is 295. I think if I agree remember our conversations before, the comment I have in there that captures what I remember today, which was, we didn't think we were comfortable committing to a specific time, but we agreed to commit to initial response in 48 hours and then a weekly update, which is what we captured in 321.
Works for me.
Okay. So again, that one we can either close, remove the cross-project council agenda item. It doesn't seem like it really needs any more activity, right?
Agreed. I mean, I can close it too. I closed the other one, so.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, perfect. Okay, post boost. So the next thing on our agenda, which is the last placeholder, is the post boost bootstrap work managed by the CPC. So I will open that up. The one thing I think I missed possibly in the earlier agenda was a review of the work, like a board update, and maybe I think we should be looking weekly at the issues that were discussed with the board. So I think maybe it'd be good to do that before we go to the general board. So the first one in there, if I've opened up the cross-project council and the items to discuss with board, the first thing we have in proposed charter changes, which is 321 that we talked before. And the next steps is, as I mentioned to Joe, just need to confirm the time has, our 14 days has passed, that Miles doesn't have any objection, and then we'll send it to the board through email for formal approval. The bring to the board travel fund stage 3. So that one is in the board because there was some discussion as to whether or not, we needed to increase the travel fund budget because it's now covering more than just the Node project, or get a commitment or something from the board to, increase the budget. It was discussed at the board level, and the response I think I can bring back is that it seems like the current budget is more than enough to cover what's going to be requested based on past experience. And I think unless people have specific concerns or we get questions, the plan might just be that, we can move forward on that.
Hey, Michael, I'm curious, are you looking at the project board now, or where are you working from?
I'm looking at the project board, which is called Items to Discuss with the Board. Here, I'll paste the link in. I should have done that.
That board, got it.
Yep. Here, let me paste it in the chat.
And as Tierney noted, Miles is here with us at the TCPI meetings. If we want to grab him, we can, but I figure we can just ping him and he can look at it for next week.
Sure. So I guess on that one, it's kind of like, I was wondering if we needed to get an increase in the budget line item, but it the sense I get is that everybody feels and is comfortable with what we have is enough, and that if it's not, it won't be a problem. So I think my current take is that unless there's somebody else who's concerned on that front, we should just move it forward and consider that that's all we need. And I guess as a stage 3, it's probably just needs to then be taken to the board for if we think it's ready as an actual approval. Any comments or discussion? Is everybody comfortable that one we should just go and ask the board for approval on?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've talked about this a couple times. I think we're at that point.
Okay, sounds good. The next thing in that is working with Legal Subcommittee. There are 2 items under there. One, which is the request for legal advice. It's process to request legal advice for projects. That one. I think we're just asking, so I don't know, Brian, if this was on your radar. I think this one we're just asking for some sort of documentation that says, okay, here's how you request legal advice. And in fact, it's related to the earlier discussion that you had on the agenda in terms of like, how do we recommend people do that?
Mm-hmm. Where would you like to document that? I mean, basically, because this is it's kind of a catch-all question, because there's really no way to predict what's going to come in. And the answer to the catch-all question is just email operations@openjsf.org, and we'll figure out how to route it.
Although that one, I would almost like, we could say that we have a directory, or we could ask that somebody opens an issue in the CPC repo that's tagged legal advice. I mean, the reason I might suggest that versus just emailing is because either myself or Chris won't be aware if those go directly to that email, right? And it's the kind of thing where we probably want somebody on the CPC to be aware so that they can facilitate if for some reason we don't get an answer, or it's stretching out, or you need more context or something like that, right?
I think that would also be on, the onus would be on whoever's the recipient of that, which right now is me, to reach out to the appropriate people on the CPC. I mean, one way or another, whether you're copied directly on it or not.
I guess, I'd be happy.
Everything is better.
I'd be happy if it was email here, but then the first step is you create an issue in the CPC repo.
That could work. We could also treat it the way that we treat the new projects list, where we just have a list that it goes to. Something that has archives which are private. I mean, either way, whatever you think is best. I mean, I'm happy to support whatever makes sense. Just the main thing that I don't want to miss in here is the part where somebody flags it to me so that I know that there's something I need to do something with.
Yeah,
that's the only part that I'm not.
Yeah, I don't know what anybody else thinks. I always prefer, if it can be in a public issue, that it is, because those are more easily discoverable if you come to the repo and search. But just my opinion. So
I guess my only concern there is, I mean, it is legal advice. They could be asking something they don't want in a public issue.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, so a good example would be license compliance and stuff like that, or license interpretation or whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe a private mailing list is like basically with the CPC members on that list as well, right?
mhm.
And then we could have something in the process that if Brian or whomever determines that it's not something that needs to be
Right.
private, then we can create the issue to track it going forward so that it's discoverable.
Yeah. I like that. That works for me. I like the mailing list because that's still, you can still go back and see the history and stuff for the CPC members at least, right? Okay, so on that one, Brian, do you want to take the action to write something up?
Sure. Where would you like me to write it up? Where should I document it?
What do people think? Have any comments or suggestions? Somewhere, I think, in the CPC repo would be my first guess.
Yeah. Do you want a new file for it, or?
I'm wondering if like we could either go one of two ways. There could be like a new file, which is like asking legal advice, which is maybe easier to find, or we could have a general one, which is like getting help or.
I'm leaning towards the second. Yeah, as you were saying that, because that would be the place to put, for example, like what to do if you need a new mailing list, or if you have a general issue of some sort, or if you have a marketing question or an issue that you need to raise. For example, if there's a wildfire on the horizon that is something that the foundation may need to react to, or the CPC may need to react to. It would be good to have just a central document where we can point people that says, here's how you find help. I can take the action to create that. I think that would be my preference, unless there's a strong feeling against it.
My only other thought as you were talking was maybe in the README itself.
We could do that too.
But I'm good either way. Like I think a separate file that says getting help or the README, I'm happy with both of those.
README might be more discoverable.
That's what I was just thinking. Like it's already right there,
Yeah,
and there's a communication channel section. So like a getting help section might be a natural addition.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. So I'm sorry, I'm getting back to the board. If I can find which window that's in. Okay, and the other one that was in that was add draft charter template. And I think, Brian, you mentioned the other day that you were working on that, right?
Yeah, so I had another look at that. I think it's, we're ready to go on that one. Jory and I had exchanged some emails on it. I mean, it looks good to go from my perspective.
Okay, so basically we believe that we've got whatever sort of legal / board comment we need on that. We can go ahead and land it. Yeah,
we've gotten no comment from the board on it, which if I recall, Chris, I think you were the one who sent this. I could be wrong in that. But if I recall correctly, it was a, speak if you have issues with it, otherwise, we'll move forward.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's kind of how I've been treating those things, is objective if you want, or this is taken as a go ahead.
Yeah.
Right. I seem to remember for some reason we thought it needed legal review, but I'm just reading through the.
We had talked about it. I did ask a little bit around, and the general consensus was probably doesn't need it since it's not a legal document.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess in that case, it would be just a matter of commenting that to that effect in the issue, saying we've done this, because the last one it says, removed agenda label for now since at legal review and tracked on our onboarding project. So if you just comment in saying we've done what we think we need to do, should be ready to land.
Yeah.
And then I guess the only question, we got lots of approvals. did we, I don't know if this is considered part of our governance. I don't think so necessarily. What do people think? You know, in terms of like, do we need an actual FYI in terms of, let's see.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. So it basically should be ready to land in that case. So yeah, Brian, if you'll just add that comment in and we can get it landed.
Sure.
Okay, excellent. And that is the items which are on the board project board. So flipping to the other project board, I will bring that up and paste that in the chat. So we might as well start with in progress. So document, define initial process for handling reports to report at openjsf.org. I'm just going to open that one. Sorry, and that's actually covered by 271. Which was landed. So actually, I think we can close that one out. Okay, so let's just do that. Okay. Okay, so going to the to-do. So define a document of style guide for the foundation name. Let's see where we're at on that one. It shows as blocked.
This should still be blocked by the fact that we didn't get around to approving that particular document in the board call.
Okay, right, okay, got it. So we're basically waiting on some of the governance being put in place for the OpenJS Foundation, and then we can flow it from there. So leave it where it is.
Yeah, very specifically, we're waiting for the trademark policy to be final.
Review foundation infrastructure and rethink how we manage it. I think I saw, so there's no update in the last 19 days, although I think I did see Jory propose that we have another follow-on meeting for the people interested in the infrastructure side of things. I don't know if anybody else has any updates or comments on that one.
I think I missed that message, but it makes a ton of sense. I'd say based upon where I know we are in the process, it's definitely time.
Okay, because I know that you were working on a draft for the services, and it was maybe in the context of like, hey, let's review that, or.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would be great to review that. I mean, it's been stable for a little while now.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be a good time to get this figured out.
Okay, so I guess we'll look for like a meeting from either yourself or Jory to move that one forward.
Yeah, let me talk with Jory and figure out a good time.
Sounds good. Next one is add admin policy docs. I think this is just like an ongoing, we need to add some documentation. I think Tierney was asking about a few of these last time. I don't know if you have any update.
Yeah, I've been planning on working.
Or maybe it was Joe, right?
Maybe both, I don't know. Tierney shakes his head. He doesn't. But I was planning on working on it, just haven't got around to it yet.
Okay, sounds good. So unless there's any updates, but still work on. So flipping back to then, sorry, I flipped to the wrong one. I have to reload this one. Then flipping on, waiting on the foundation board, project directed funding. I know that one's still waiting on sort of a larger discussion / suggested direction. So I don't think we have anything to move that one forward. The other one was the update or move JSF CLA bot to new foundation. I think, Brian, you know the latest state on that one?
Yes, sorry, I couldn't get off mute again. Yeah, so this is, again, it's another one where we need the board to fully sign off on the CLA document. There's one member which is still wanting to do some additional reviews on it. So we weren't quite ready to approve it in the board meeting on Friday. Once we actually have the CLA text, then we'll be able to get everybody set up on the, on the replacement for CLA bot.
Sounds good.
In this case would be easy CLA because it provides a fair number of features which CLA bot does not.
And I guess the high level messages on both of those, well, at least on that second one, there's definitely things in progress, so it shouldn't be too far out before there is an answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, so that was everything that's on our board. I guess and that takes us to the end of the agenda. Is there anything else that people wanted to add to the public agenda before we close out for today?
Yeah, this is Christian. I just wanted to say that we have opened up the call for proposals for the Collab Summit sessions. So I will post a link into the chat. So we have publicly announced the Open Collaborator Summit for the Node+JS Interactive Conference. So it will be a side event, as well as the Code and Learn. As probably some of you know, we're going to try a new format this time. We will see if that's going to work out. The call for session proposals there is open as well. We hope for collaboration from the project side as well as from the attendees. So yeah, that I wanted to go out. I will send out a mailing email on the mailing list. So that we can reach out to all of the projects, because we want to, especially for the summit, we want that every project is being involved and can collaborate with each other at that time. That's it.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I do remember you'd posted on the issue, so sorry about forgetting that, but thanks for reminding us to make sure people start submitting on those two things. Is there any sort of cutoff? I know in the past, people have submitted fairly late, and we haven't necessarily had a cutoff. Is there anything like that this time, or is it please start now, but there's no drop? There's no point at which there's not a date that we need to make before in order to get something in.
For the summit or Code and Learn?
I guess for both of them, it would be good to mention. If there is a particular time, it would be good to mention them.
So yeah, no, we have not defined a cutoff. We just, as sooner as we have session prepared, as easier it is for us to organize everything. So as sooner is better.
Yep.
But I guess we can be straight forward and rearrange things when we do the Collab Summit.
Yeah, but please, if you have an idea, post it now. Okay. Okay, thanks. Any other things?
I just asked in chat, do we want to check on the project onboarding project board before we move on to other things? I don't think there's too much there, but maybe Brian has some updates on a couple of things.
Sure.
Since we're ahead of time.
Yep, let me look at that one. So we do have quite a few things on there. So let's start with blocked. Provide guidance on how to refer to the foundation in licensed copyright statements.
Yes, so this is something which is derivative of the legal documents.
Okay, so same thing, progress being made, but still blocked. Sorry. I guess while I'm thinking too, we should probably update the template so that it has this on the agenda as well, because it does seem like something we should go through. In terms of the doing, there's a few of the onboarding for existing projects: message format, hospital run, Mocha, architect. I'm not sure if it's worth going through each of those individually, but I don't know, Brian, if there's any comments, things to bring out on those.
Not that I'm aware of, although I haven't been tracking anything specifically on them.
I'm under the impression everything's kind of on hold for the other things that we're waiting on this project board.
Okay. Add a draft charter template. We already talked about that one. So then moving from the doing to the to-do. We have create mockups for displaying OpenJS Foundation mark on project websites. And Jory opened that one. I don't know if anybody has an update on anything on that one, or we're still waiting to basically have a volunteer to do it.
Brian, is this something that we would expect from the foundation, I assume?
I mean, it could go either way. My impression on that one was that there was discussion that each project's website was so different, it didn't maybe make sense to prescribe this unilaterally.
Yeah, that's what I remember as well. As I was working through Architect and looking at some of the other project sites, like they're just so different. It's really hard to prescribe how they would display that information and provide a specific template.
I'd agree that it, like, short of putting a banner that's just static on every website, you're not going to find success with that, like prescribing something. And I also know that, that such a banner would break the design aesthetic and approach of a lot of the websites. And I'd rather not enforce like a certain design style on any of the websites.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the idea. Was we were trying to put together a banner, and after looking at even just 2 or 3 sites, it was obvious that it wasn't going to work universally. So I think we kind of came to the conclusion that it might be better just to provide sort of what should be displayed on a website in terms of like logo or any notices or anything, but leave it up to the projects to determine how it fits into their design.
That seems to already actually be agreed in the issue now that I look at the last comment. It just seems to be so that we don't lose the thread. Is it okay if we keep it open and then transfer it into the branding repo once it's set up?
That seems
okay. So in that case, doesn't sound like we really need to discuss anything. If not, we might as well move on to the next issue, which is form for keeping certain project details. Again, Jory opened that one. It says review onboarding checklist C262. If you identify we need to ask project information related to infrastructure, personal contact information, which we probably don't want to display publicly.
Right.
But we want to have certain roles to have access to that. Brian suggests this could be a private repo or something like that, right? It's in to do, so I guess it's just a matter of like anything we want to discuss on that one, or just leave it into to do for now.
I'm good.
Okay, and I think then the last one is ask projects to start updating references to docs and CPC repo. I think that one was generally waiting on, having a few of the first projects get through the onboarding before we would make the broader request. And I don't know if anything's changed on that front. Anybody have any thoughts, comments in terms of that?
Nope, sounds like it should wait.
Okay, so that was what was on that board. Thanks, Joe. And like I said, probably we should update the agenda to tack that on with the other review of that board along with the other one.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
So any other things we should bring up or go through before we call it the public session for today? Okay, sounds like no. So let's